where they carry the ballots. No matter how many times senior Department of Justice officials, including his own Attorney General, told the president that these allegations were not true, President Trump kept promoting these lies and putting pressure on state officials to accept them. On January 2nd, the president had a lengthy telephone conversation with Secretary Raffensperger. Prior to the president's call, though, I want to share a bit of important context. First, the White House, including the former president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, repeatedly called or texted the secretary's office some 18 times in order to set up this call. They were quite persistent. Second, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows took the extraordinary step of showing up at a signature audit site in Georgia, where he met with Secretary Raffensperger's chief investigator, Francis Watson, who was supervising that audit process. Behind me is a photograph from that visit. Third, the day after Meadows' Georgia visit, he set up a call between President Trump and Francis Watson. On the call between President Trump and Georgia investigator Francis Watson, the former president continued to push the false claim that he'd won the state of Georgia. Let's listen to that part of the conversation.
You know, you have the most important job in the country right now, because if we win Georgia, first of all, if we win, you're going to have 2 wins. They're not going to win right now. You know, they're down because the people of Georgia are so angry at what happened to me. They know I won by hundreds of thousands of votes. It wasn't close.
And in this next clip, he told this state law enforcement official that she'd be praised if she found the right answer.
Hopefully, I will. When the right answer comes out, you'll be praised. I mean, I don't know why. They made it so hard. They will be praised. People will say, "Great," because that's what it's about, that ability to check and to make it right. Because everyone knows it's wrong. There's just no way.
Mr. Raffensperger, I know you weren't on this call, but that you have listened.
And the Republican congressman ended up getting 33,000 more votes than President Trump. And that's why President Trump came up short.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The president on this call doesn't stop here. Let's listen to another part of the conversation between President Trump and Ms. Watson.
Anyway, but whatever you can do, Francis, it would be, it's a great thing. It's an important thing for the country. So important. You have no idea it's so important. Well, and I very much appreciate it.
Whatever you can do, Francis. This is the President of the United States calling an investigator looking into the election in which he is a candidate and asking her to do whatever you can do. Mr. Secretary, he placed this call to your chief investigator on September 23rd, 2020. The Select Committee has received text messages indicating that Mark Meadows wanted to send some of the investigators in her office, in the words of one White House aide, a shitload of POTUS stuff, including coins, actual autographed MAGA hats, etc. White House staff intervened to make sure that didn't happen. It was clear at the time of this call that the former president had his sights set on January 6th. Listen to this portion when he told Francis Watson about a very important date.
Do you think they'll be working after Christmas and keep it going fast? Because, we have that date of the 6th, which is a very important date.
That important date, of course, was the joint session of Congress, where Georgia's electoral votes would be counted for Joe Biden. A little over a week after this call to Francis Watson, the president was finally able to speak with you, Secretary Raffensperger. Bear in mind, as we discuss this call today, that by this point in time, early January, the election in Georgia had already been certified. But perhaps more important, the President of the United States had already been told repeatedly by his own top Justice Department officials that the claims he was about to make to you about massive fraud in Georgia were completely false. Mr. Secretary, the call between you and the President lasted 67 minutes, over an hour. We obviously can't listen to the entire recording here today, although it is available on the Select Committee's website. But we'll listen to selected excerpts of it now so that we can get your insights. Let's begin with the President raising the thoroughly debunked allegations of suitcases of ballots.
In an official voter box. They were in what looked to be suitcases or trunks, suitcases, but they weren't in voter boxes. The minimum number it could be, because we watched it and they watched it certified in slow motion, instant replay, if you can believe it, but had slow motion and it was magnified many times over. And the minimum it was 18,000 ballots, all for Biden.
These are the allegations that the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and your office had all said were false. Is that right?
Correct. And even more importantly, when B.J. Pack resigned as U.S. Attorney of the Northern District, President Trump appointed as acting U.S. Attorney of the Northern District Bobby Christine. And Bobby Christine looked at that, and he was quoted in the AJC that he found nothing. And he dismissed that case early also.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The President references suitcases or trunks. Mr. Sterling, were the objects seen in these videos suitcases or trunks, or were they just the ordinary containers that are used by election workers?
They're standard ballot carriers that allow for seals to be put on them so they're tamper-proof.
And finally, the President claims that there was a minimum of 18,000 ballots somehow smuggled in, all for Biden. I take it, gentlemen, that was also categorically false?
There's no physical way he can know who those ballots were for, but secondarily, Fulton County for years has been an issue in our state when it comes to elections. So they had a very difficult time during the primary, in large part because of COVID. So we had put them under a consent decree the Secretary got negotiated, where we had a monitor on site. And his name is Carter Jones, and he took a notation. He had gone from State Farm to the English Street warehouse to look at election day activities, but before he left the State Farm Arena, he noted how many ballots had been counted on each one of the machines. And when he came back after we found out they were working again, he took note again when they closed. And I believe the final number was something around 8,900 total ballots were scanned from the time he left to the time about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So way below 18,000.
Let's play the next clip.
I heard it was close. I said, there's no way. But they dropped a lot of votes in there late at night. You know that, Brett.
Mr. Secretary, did somebody drop a lot of votes there late at night?
No. I believe that the President was referring to some of the counties when they would upload, but the ballots had all been accepted and had to be accepted by state law by 7 p.m. So there were no additional ballots accepted after 7 p.m.
Let's play the next clip in which the President makes claims about so-called dead voters.
The other thing, dead people. So dead people voted. And I think the number is in the close to 5,000 people. And they went to obituaries, they went to all sorts of methods to come up with an accurate number. And a minimum is close to about 5,000 voters.
Mr. Secretary, did your office investigate whether those allegations were accurate? Did 5,000 dead people in Georgia vote?
No, it's not accurate. And actually, in their lawsuits, they allege 10,315 dead people. We found 2 dead people when I wrote my letter to Congress that's dated January 6th. And subsequent to that, we found 2 more. That's 4 people, not 4,000, but just a total of 4, not 10,000, not 5,000.
Let's play the next clip.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated, because the 2,236 and absentee ballots, I mean, they're all exact numbers that were done by accounting firms, law firms, etc. And even if you cut them in half, and cut them in half again, it's more votes than we need.
Mr. Secretary, is there any way that you could have lawfully changed the result in the state of Georgia and somehow explained it away as a recalculation?
No, the numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations, and we investigated every single one of them. In fact, I challenged my team, did we miss anything? They said that there was over 66,000 underage voters. We found that there was actually 0. You can register to vote in Georgia. When you're 17 and a half, you have to be 18 by Election Day. We checked that out, every single voter. They said that there was 2,423 non-registered voters. There were 0. They said that there was 2,056 felons. We identified less than 74 or less that were actually still in felony sentence. Every single allegation we checked, we ran down the rabbit trail to make sure that our numbers were accurate.
So there's no way you could have recalculated it except by fudging the numbers?
The numbers were the numbers, and we could not recalculate because we had made sure that we had checked every single allegation. And we had many investigations. We had nearly 300 from the 2020 election.
Mr. Secretary, you tried to push back when the president made these unsupported claims, whether they were about suitcases of ballots or that Biden votes were counted 3 times. Let's play the next clip.
President, they did not put that. We did an audit of that, and we proved conclusively that they were not scanned 3 times. Yeah, Mr. President, we'll send you the link from WSB that does.
I don't care about a link. I don't need it. I have a much better link.
You told the president you would send him a link from WSB, which I understand is a local television station that had a unedited video from the State Farm Arena. But the president wasn't interested in that. He said he had a much better link. Mr. Secretary, at the time that you were on the call with the president, as we have shown, both the FBI and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation had proven these claims to be nonsense. And you told him about these investigations on the phone. Let's listen to what President Trump had to say about the state and federal law enforcement officers who investigated these false claims.
There's no way they could find. Then they're incompetent. They're either dishonest or incompetent. Okay, there's only 2 answers: dishonesty or incompetence. There's just no way. Look, there's no way.
But the president didn't stop at insinuating that law enforcement officers were either dishonest or incompetent. He went on to suggest that you could be subject to criminal liability for your role in the matter. Before I play that portion of the conversation, I'd like to show you something that the president retweeted a couple weeks before your call with him. Here's the president retweeting a post from one of his allies, a lawyer who was later sanctioned by a judge in Michigan for making false claims of election fraud. Let's take a look at that tweet. The tweet read, quote, "President Trump, @real Donald Trump, is a genuinely good man. He does not really like to fire people. I bet he dislikes putting people in jail, especially, quote unquote, Republicans. He gave @Brian Kemp, Georgia, and @Georgia Secretary of State every chance to get it right. They refused. They will soon be going to jail." So on your call, this was not the first time the president was suggesting you might be criminally liable. With that, let's listen to this portion of the call.
I think you're going to find that they are shredding ballots because they have to get rid of the ballots because the ballots are unsigned. The ballots are corrupt. And they're brand new and they don't have seals. And there's a whole thing with the ballots, but the ballots are corrupt. And you're going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. And you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk.
Secretary Raffensperger, after making a false claim about shredding of ballots, the president suggested that you may be committing a crime by not going along with his claims of election fraud. And after suggesting that you might have criminal exposure, President Trump makes his most explicit ask of the call. Let's play a part of that conversation.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Mr. Secretary, was the president here asking you for exactly what he wanted, one more vote than his opponent?
What I knew is that we didn't have any votes to find. We had continued to look. We investigated, like I just shared the numbers with you. There were no votes to find. That was an accurate count that had been certified. And as our general counsel said, there was no shredding of ballots.
Mr. Secretary, after making this request, the president then goes back to the danger of having you deny these allegations of fraud. Let's listen to that part of the clip.
And I watched you this morning, and you said, well, there was no criminality, but I mean, all of this stuff is very dangerous stuff. When you talk about no criminality, I think it's very dangerous for you to say that.
Secretary Raffensperger, you wrote about this in your book, and you said, quote, "I felt then and still believe today that this was a threat. Others obviously thought so too, because some of Trump's more radical followers have responded as if it was their duty to carry out this threat. Please tell us what you, your wife, even your daughter-in-law experienced regarding threats from Trump's more radical followers."
Well, after the election, my email, my cell phone was doxxed, and so I was getting text all over the country, and then eventually my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. You have to understand that Trish and I, we met in high school, and we've been married over 40 years now, and so they started going after her, I think, just to probably put pressure on me. Why don't you just quit, walk away? And so that happened, and then some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids, and so we're very concerned about her safety also.
And Mr. Secretary, why didn't you just quit and walk away?
Because I knew that we had followed the law and we had followed the Constitution. And I think sometimes moments require you to stand up and just take the shots when you're doing your job. And that's all we did. You know, we just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short. But I had to be faithful to the Constitution. And that's what I swore an oath to do.
During the remainder of the call, the former president continued to press you to find the remaining votes that would ensure his victory in Georgia. Let's listen to a little more.
Why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad, instead of keep saying that the numbers are right? So look, can you get together tomorrow? And Brad, we just want the truth. It's simple. And everyone's going to look very good if the truth comes out. It's okay. It takes a little while, but let the truth come out. And the real truth is I won by 400,000 votes, at least. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
4 days after the president's call to Secretary Raffensperger was January 6th. The president whipped up the crowd in front of the ellipse, once again promoting the allegation that Secretary Raffensperger, the president's own attorney general, had told him was false. Here he is on the ellipse.
In Fulton County, Republican poll watchers were ejected, in some cases physically, from the room under the false pretense of a pipe burst, water main burst, everybody leave, which we now know was a total lie. Then election officials pulled boxes, Democrats, and suitcases of ballots out from under a table. You all saw it on television, totally fraudulent, and illegally scanned them for nearly 2 hours, totally unsupervised. Tens of thousands of votes. This act coincided with a mysterious vote dump of up to 100,000 votes for Joe Biden, almost none for Trump. Oh, that sounds fair. That was at 1:34 a.m.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Sterling, I want to thank you for your service to the state of Georgia and to the country. Speaker Bowers, likewise, I want to thank you for your service to the state of Arizona and to the country. You have served not only your home states, but our nation and our democracy. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff.